Thanks. Well, I'm in the unlucky position of following up Shane. I don't know how I'm going to keep the energy going to that extent, but I'll do my best. So I am Ashley Wally. I lead product design and project management at Discuss.io. So we are a video conferencing and insights platform that helps consumer companies connect with their users or their consumers around the world. And then we give them tools to help them quickly analyze that data and get answers out of it. Before that, I was working at ModCloth, which is an e-commerce clothing company. And I was at an e-commerce consultancy before that, and then I did some public sector consulting with a company called Bearing Point, which is now part of Deloitte. So that's kind of the staid career story, but if you want the exciting story, you can catch me afterward and I can tell you about fun times being a copywriter for a Vending Machine Insights Association magazine, or writing SEO copy for Halloween costumes and that sort of thing. So I have exciting stories to tell as well. So what we're going to be talking about today is startup leadership, and particularly product market fit, and how you drive to executive alignment. So the idea of lots of ideas coming in from lots of different places and the noise that that can create, and how you can push through that as a product leader to help organize and galvanize your executive team to kind of stay on the same path to get to product market fit and ultimately to profit. So where are we going? All of us, I think, want to be George Washington over here majestically, fearlessly leading his team through, some choppy waters with some icebergs to navigate around, but generally knowing exactly where he's going. But if you're like me, or I think a lot of product leaders, you might feel a little bit more like Sandra Bullock, where you're, rowing blindfolded and just trying to survive. So where we're headed, of course, is the magical land of profit and docking at the, port of product market fit. But there's a lot of challenges that a startup leader is going to face before you get to the George Washington kind of persona. So some of those things that I have faced and that may seem familiar to you as well is the idea that you are in many ways just fighting to survive, fighting to create a product and find customers who are willing to purchase that product while staving off competition who may be better funded and better staffed than you are. And I think the blindfolds really come in when we think about the lack of data that we often have in a startup situation. So many of the kind of core B2B numbers that you might look for, you may not have in an early stage. So you might not know your acquisition cost because you're playing around with different acquisition channels. So it might vary pretty significantly. Or you might not know your lifetime value of a customer because you're still pretty early in the overall customer journey and the customer life cycle. Another challenge that I think many of us face is just having access to the data that we need. You may not have all of the systems set up and have a data warehouse that you can access. That's something that my team fought through, and just in the last 6 months or so have gotten access to a real-time production database that we can be querying and actually get answers that we needed. So once you get that, you may still be in a situation where you don't have help to analyze the data that's coming from lots of different systems. So there's a number of challenges that I think we're going to come up against. And even once you get through those, there's still sort of this question of maybe even what is product market fit? Does everyone know what that term means? Somewhat? Okay. So product market fit, there's a number of definitions out there. One of them that I like is from Andrew Chen. He was the former head of writer growth at Uber, and he's now a partner at Andreessen Horowitz, which is one of the most prestigious venture capital firms in Silicon Valley. So his definition is when people who know they want your product are happy with your offering. There's another definition from Marc Andreessen, who was the founder of Netscape, and of course, one of the founders of Andreessen Horowitz, and he really popularized this term. And his definition was when you have a good market and a product that satisfies that market. So Marc Andreessen focuses a little bit more on the market space, actually, than the product that fits in it, and than many people do today when they talk about product market fit. So there's definitely a need to identify if you're in the right market, if you're in a market that has enough potential to support the type of product that you're looking to sell. But regardless of how we identify it, Mark Andreessen says that for early stage companies, it is the only thing that matters. And I think that's true because we're talking about, in many cases, survival, if we go back to the Sandra Bullock example. So who is responsible for that? It comes down to the CEO. But you're also needing to coordinate that with a product leader. So this will be somewhat controversial because a lot of people think that you don't need a product leader in an early stage company where you don't yet have product market fit. In the real world, in the companies that I've worked in, that's never really been the case because we haven't had the time for a CEO to be dedicated in that way, to do the heavy lifting of going through and going out and talking to people and iterating on the concepts until you get something that works. So in my opinion, the CEO should be responsible for the one-point vision statement that is driving all of the product decisions from there. So the one-point vision statement that we have come up with at Discuss.io is we help marketers make informed decisions faster. So all of our decisions that come from that is, does this feature, does this product, does this space allow us to help marketers make informed decisions faster? There's a lot of good ones out there. There's a book from the founders of Basecamp, 37 Signals, and they go through a whole exercise of helping you figure out what your one-point vision is. So I would recommend you guys pick that up. I think it's by Jason Fried, and I forget exactly what the title of it is. But so your CEO helps craft that one-point vision statement, and then your product leader takes that and figures out, okay, what is the product that helps us get there? And reports back to the CEO, brings information in to say, okay, this is hitting, this is not hitting, here's where we need to adjust things, and here's where we go from here. So this is something that I struggled with earlier in my career pretty significantly, of if I come and say, okay, I'm not finding that product, it's not hitting, taking ownership and saying this is the direction that we should go instead. So when I started at Discuss.io, I found that we had product market fit in that we had a market that was willing to pay, we had customers who were happy with our product, but we were in a space where we were delivering that total service and product offering in a way that was not financially sustainable for us. It cost too much money to actually execute and organize the projects that we were doing for people. So they were okay with the price, and they were happy with the product, and they were happy with the deliverable, but we couldn't continue to sustain that. So the direction that I was brought in to work through was, okay, we're going to automate all of these setup processes, and then we're going to be able to offer this at either a lower cost to a lower tier market, or we will just be able to do this sustainably. But what I found when I was actually out talking with our customers was they didn't care a whole lot about the setup process. The problem that they actually had was, what do I do with all of my data after I've done a project with you? I have 15 to 40 hours worth of video data, and I don't know what to do with it now. I don't have time to go back to do it, to look through it, to pull out the important points. So I was kind of stuck in this position of we were trying to go in one direction as a company and me needing to be the voice of the customer to say, this is not working, like this does not actually meet the needs of our customers if we move in this other direction. And it took a lot of work to get myself to the point of saying, this is actually the direction that we need to go. So driving to product market fit was something that I ended up taking on in conjunction with my CEO to say, is this direction that we're talking about going really in line with this one-point vision that we're trying to accomplish? Turns out it wasn't, so we had to work through that. So how do we drive to executive alignment? How many B2B people are there in here? Mostly B2B, okay. So what I have found in B2B companies is you often have pretty vocal internal departments. You've got a vocal sales team that is going out and advocating for what their prospects and their customers need. You probably have a pretty vocal customer success team who is on the front lines talking with people day in and day out. And then you probably have a pretty vocal executive team who says, this is the vision, this is where I want this company to go. Please don't get pulled off track by all of these different requests. So how do you, as a product leader, drive all of those voices and kind of help cut out the noise to executive alignment? First is to learn your customers. Second, we'll talk about reconfirming the vision based on what we've heard from those customers. Evaluate and prioritize the work that you're doing as it fits back into that vision, and then adjusting at certain intervals. So, learn your customers. 86% of product managers self-report not spending enough time on user interviews. How many of you guys have talked to a real customer or user in the last month? How about the last week? All right, pretty good, pretty good. So this seems like it should be pretty easy, right? But it's actually pretty difficult because when you actually talk to your customers, you have to set aside all of your assumptions. You have to come in with a listening mind. Watch how they're using your product. Listen to what they're actually saying. And it requires you to set aside the assumptions and the agendas that you have about your product, which are usually pretty strong. But I think we've probably all heard the saying that you are not your user, right? So this number is a problem because there's a huge chance for hubris here, that we think we know the answers because we're in this headspace all day long. But you are not your user. So we have to get that level of customer feedback in on a regular basis. So for those who aren't doing it enough, how do you get there? How do you do that? Tactically, what do we do to get in front of customers? If you already have an active user base, start there. Send out an email and ask if there are people who will be willing to give you feedback on a prototype or just sit down for a conversation. You could send out specific information to a smaller targeted customer base if you're trying to get feedback on a particular feature that you know only a section of your users use. But I've seen this work for both quant surveys where you're just saying, hey, how are you using our product, or what are your problems across the industry, things like that. Or just a general, hey, will you volunteer to be on this mailing list so that we can contact you as we come up with new product ideas? Like, who's going to be our beta tester group? If your company's large enough, you may consider a customer advisory board or a product advisory group, something like that. Once you have that group in place, or let's say you don't have that, actually I'll stop there. So if you don't have a user base already in place that you can work with, or you're looking to move into a new market where you don't have connections already, find where those people exist online and go after that. Are they on LinkedIn? Are they on Reddit? Like, is there a subreddit that has a high correlation with the type of person that you want to talk to? Go post over there. Look for online panels. My company does this for, this is our business. There are other companies like usertesting.com or respondent.io that do this all day long for people, help get you in front of your target users. So once you're in front of them, you start by asking the same questions every time. So it is always worth creating a discussion guide when you're getting in front of your users so that you stay focused and you're asking the same questions across all of the conversations. It's easy to think that I'm going to remember what I want to say, I'm going to ask the same questions, but in reality, we let ourselves get pulled off track pretty frequently. So I do recommend writing a quick discussion guide of these are the core things I want to focus on, and these are some extra questions if we have time to get there. And then lastly, don't let geography hold you back. There are a lot of online solutions now that can get you in front of people in any country in the world with any user base within a few days. It may not be within a couple of hours, but it can be within a day or two. So don't let geography hold you back. Okay, so we've talked to our customers and we've hopefully learned a lot of good information. Now what do? We have to go back and reconfirm the vision of the entire company, not just of the product, because as a product leader in an early stage company, you have an outsized impact on the direction and the future of the company. And that can be hard to swallow sometimes. It's a lot of responsibility, and it's a hard job. But when you're in an early stage company and you're in charge of the direction of the product, it influences almost, if not all, of the other business areas that you're working with. So you do have to come back together as a leadership team and say, okay, based on what we've learned from customers, is the vision the correct one? Is the product we're talking about building consistent with what we're hearing from our customers? And is that consistent with where we say we want to go as a business? If you find a misalignment, you have to stop there and either adjust your vision, which we call a pivot, right? Or adjust the product that you're building, or find a different customer base. Find the actual customer base who wants the thing that you're trying to build to fulfill the vision that you have. Any of those three things could need alignment after this point. So when I was first joining Discuss.io and I had all these conversations with users, I sat down with our sales team and I sat down with our customer success team and I went on site with our biggest client and I met with half a dozen people at various levels of seniority, and I uncovered a web of conflicts. There were conflicts between the needs of our budget holders and our actual users of the product. There were conflicts between what one client wanted and what another client wanted. And there were conflicts between how we were actually executing our projects and where our founders wanted everything to go. So picking that apart required us to go back and recommit to what this vision is and where we were trying to go so that we could parse out the noise and try and focus the product just on the things that were moving us toward helping marketers make more informed decisions faster. So then we get into the evaluation and prioritization phase. This is where you get to make a lot of people unhappy. So we start with metrics if we can. If you were in this lucky position of knowing what feature usage drives renewal to your product, fabulous. Start with that. I was talking with some product leaders at an e-commerce tech company, and they told me, we figured out that if we get our clients to install this widget on their product details page, it is a hugely strong positive correlation that they will renew their account. So our focus right now is driving as many clients as we can into usage of that feature because we know that they're most likely to renew their account with us if we can get them to use this and see value from this widget that we have. They're in an enviable position because I think many of us don't have that level of clarity of this feature drives this behavior and that behavior drives renewal. So if you're not in that position, work backwards from that vision. So obviously we're fighting to get the data that we need and the answers that we need, and that's usually a journey that takes a long time. I know this company that I'm referencing, they spent most of 2018 figuring that out. It was a long journey to figure out what behavior drives renewal for them. So if you're not in that position, you can work backwards from your vision. Does this idea that we're debating around, does it tie back into our vision? Is it actually going to get us closer to fulfilling that need that our customer actually has? So that's one way that we can work to evaluate and prioritize the ideas that are most meaningful to moving the business toward product market fit. And secondly, just focus on what matters. It doesn't matter if it's beautiful if no one is going to use it. If it is not a feature that helps you get closer to product market fit, that helps you get new customers, that helps you get to profit, leave it out for now. Maybe now is not the right time. There's a lot of, that is a great idea, and we're not going to do it. And lastly, you're gonna disappoint a lot of people. There are going to be closely held desires and features that people want within your clients. I don't know about you guys, but I will have clients reach out to me and specifically ask for a feature or an extension to something because it's meaningful to how they work. But it's not always meaningful to the other 100 clients, in their cohort. Saying yes, thank you, and we're not going to build that right now is a really difficult discussion to have. So how I like to do that is by working on communicating with empathy. Yes, that is a great idea, and we're not going to build it. You will say this to your CEO. You will say this to your VP of sales. You will say this to your VP of customer success. I have said all of those things to all of those people. You have to, because if you don't, you will pull yourself off track. You will be building too many things to solve too many one-off problems for too many individual people. And you will find yourself not actually making progress 6 months down the line. You will have solved this problem for this person and this problem for this person. And that nasty word of innovation, you won't actually have moved down that path. So to communicate with empathy, I think one of the most important things that a product leader can do is foster a sense of safety and creativity within their company for product ideas. And I think you know this is happening when your product managers are responding not defensively when they get questioned about something or when an idea is brought up that's not in line with what they're focusing on right now, but rather saying, thank you. That is such a great idea. I'd love to learn more about why that customer is asking for this thing. Or can you help me sit down and build a business case for that? Can you help me think through how much money could we make from this? And do you truly think it's more important than this focus that we have for Q2? If so, okay, let's keep that going. If not, thank you. That's awesome, and we're not going to build it right now. So fostering a sense of creativity is really important within your company, but you also want to be able to maintain that control over your roadmap because you as a product leader manage the product, the customers don't. Right? The clients do not dictate your product to you. And so often they will if you let them. I think another way that you see this creativity is if your customer success reps feel comfortable bringing an idea to you. If there's a space for people to share ideas and talk about what's important to their particular customer. Like what is the pain point that that person is feeling right now? So there's a balance that I'm asking you to draw between keeping yourself focused on this one path forward and still allowing for creativity within your overall organization. Because that is where a lot of the great ideas come from, the people who are on the front lines. All right, and then lastly, we have to adjust. This one's really important when you're driving to executive alignment because it helps people not feel locked in for too long. It gives you a chance to say, yes, we can have that conversation in a month because we're going to reevaluate what we do. So at a yearly level, you should be looking high-level company goals, KPIs, OGSMs, whatever you want to, whatever acronym your company is using for these things. That should be done at the yearly level from the company perspective and then falling down into how does that impact the product priorities. So these are, when I talk about high-level general roadmap, I'm talking the boulders. I'm talking the parts of your product that you want to be touching that year. Then on a quarterly basis, you want to review your progress towards your yearly plan and set out a more specific roadmap that you can commit to. This is something that we're trying. I'm hoping that it's going to work. I can't guarantee, I can't report back yet on its success, but the idea being for Q2, this is all we're focusing on from a moving the product forward standpoint, and the only thing we're doing aside from this is production support. We're keeping the lights on, we're fixing the bugs that need to be fixed, and this is the focus that we have. And that is something that our executive team has responded really well to because it gives us a framework for, yes, we can have these conversations, we can still make progress on the things we really need to make progress on, and there's a set time to have this dialogue. So we're doing that at a quarterly level, and then assuming that you're doing sprints and things, you've got your sprint planning where you can readjust towards, are we moving toward that quarterly plan? Are we set, and this is of course at the story and the feature and design level, this is where we're pretty set in stone. And lastly, at the daily level, you can realign at stand-ups. I have stopped so many times developers over-investing in something or under-investing in something at a stand-up, because that's where you get that most granular, finest level information about what's actually happening in your product. So if you're not going to daily stand-ups, someone from the product team should be. If you have multiple levels, definitely have someone there, because you can realign. It's a great chance to kind of stop and reevaluate. So these are my steps for how to drive to executive alignment. So we start with talking to our customers. We reconfirm what the vision is overall of the company. We evaluate and prioritize our work. And we adjust at set intervals to make sure that no one feels too locked in for too long. And it also will allow you to then adjust to changing market conditions and changing needs within your organization. That's all for me. Thank you so much.